Hi kids, it's me, Mrs. McBride, and I thought we'd try something a little different today for our demonstration. I want to show you guys how to shade a ball or a sphere. So what you're going to need is a piece of colored paper, a circle tracer, and then just a regular pencil, a white colored pencil, and then a colored pencil that can go kind of dark or has a darker version of it. Like I have red here, and then I have Tuscan red. All right, so we're going to keep this really simple, and then I'm going to have you guys give it a try. So the first thing you want to do is take your regular pencil and just trace your circle tracer, but do it lightly, okay? And then you got to figure out where do you want your light source coming from. And if you're right-handed and you're just learning, it's probably easier to start with the light source coming from the upper right. If you're left-handed, it might be a little easier to go from the upper left. But what you're going to do is first you want to put the highlight on your drawing. So you don't want to put it right on the edge of the circle. You want to put it in a little bit. And remember, your light source is coming this way, okay? So you've got a circle, and for those of you that did the angler fish in our fish composition, some of you did this. So you want to start out with a bright white circle. So you're pressing really, really hard, and you've got a nice bright white circle, okay? But then what you want to do is you want this highlight to kind of fade away. So you want to use your little circular motions. We've talked about that a lot. And as you kind of go out, you gradually let up on the pressure with your hand, like that. And if it doesn't look right the first time, that's the great thing about shading, is you can go back and you can rework it and keep at it until it looks right. So we're just gonna fade that away, like that. Okay, so that's the first step. Then what we wanna do is start adding the color. And you may not even end up coloring the entire circle. But what you want to do is imagine that if the light's coming this way, over here is going to be dark. Now, like I said before, you can always go back and make colored pencil darker, but start out kind of light and then you kind of layer up to get it darker. Now, what's interesting about shading a sphere is some people think like, you know, this entire side would be light and this entire side would be dark, but that's not really how it works out. So let me show you what you do. So you want to start out opposite the light source just because it's easier, and you want to press a little bit harder right on the edge. And you know, if you get into a little more serious art, there are things called reflected light and the core of the shadow. We're not going to get into all that stuff. But what you want to do is you want to start out darkest right here on the edge, and then as you move towards the light source, you're going to fade that color away. Okay? And one thing that you don't want to do is for this particular drawing, you don't want to overlap the white with the other color. Keep them separate so that the paper, whatever color paper you're using, will actually show through. And you may think to yourself, well, that's going to look kind of weird. But actually, it looks better than if you blend them together. You don't want the white and the color to blend. Okay. Now, I'm keeping this pretty light, but you know what? Here's what's going to happen. You want to, even on the side facing the light source, you want to put a little bit of that color in. But I'm just doing it very lightly. And remember how we talked about not twisting the pencil in your fingers? That way you wear down one side of the pencil and it's kind of flat, and it makes it easier to give you lighter values. Okay, so I'm using my little circles. All right, so now I've got some red pretty much everywhere. And now I'm going to go in and I'm going to start to darken some areas. And basically what's going to happen is like the edges will be the darkest areas, but they're not going to be super dark on the side facing the light source, but they'll still have some color and some value to them. The main thing about shading a sphere is you never want to have distinct changes in value. Everything should be very, very gradual. Okay, so I'm just kind of layering so that it gets darker and darker opposite the light source, but it fades towards the light source. It doesn't abruptly end. Okay. Now, that's sort of starting to look a little bit 3D, a little bit more than, just coloring it red. That would make it look like a flat circle. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Tuscan red, so I've got this crimson red, I think it's called, and I'm going to layer over it with like a little bit darker version of red. And remember, colored pencils work best if you layer them. And that's going to give us a little bit more of that shadow value. And again, notice I'm using my little circles. And I can always go back and make it darker, but you don't want to erase colored pencil because it smears and then it just never looks right. Okay, and I'm going to keep layering it. I'm going to keep going. Now, once you get the sphere itself shaded in, then you're going to do the cast shadow. And that really completes the illusion of 3 dimensions. All right, so let's go to the cast shadow. We can always come back and tweak this a little bit if we need it. So for my cast shadow, I'm going to need a gray and I'm going to need a black. Okay? Now, if the light's coming this way, the shadow is going to be opposite the light source. And the shape of the shadow is determined by the shape of the object. But remember, it's laying on a flat surface, so it's going to look something like this. Okay? And then what you want to do, and this is if the ball is sitting on a surface. It's a little different if you want to make the ball look like it's floating. So what you want to do is, once again, you want to start out light because you can always go back and make it darker. So I'm starting with the gray and I'm using my little circles. And what you want to do is the shadow is going to be darkest, the cast shadow, right up next to the object. So as it moves away from the object, it's going to kind of fade out a little bit. Okay, so now I've got kind of an even value across the whole thing. And then right up next to the sphere, I am going to start to press a little bit harder. But think about like where the sphere is touching the surface. And that's where you want it to be the darkest. And also, there is something called the core of the shadow, which is right here kind of in the center. And that's going to be, darn. That's going to be where the, I'm just going to ignore that. That's going to be where the darkest values are. Okay, and then I'm going to take my black and I am going to go even a little bit darker here at the core of the shadow. So I'm using my little circles. I'm being really careful. I want what's called a hard edge right here, like a very distinct edge where the color of the sphere ends and the shadow begins. You don't want that to blend at all. And then I'm just going to fade it away. Okay, and then if I want to, I can always come back in and I can darken this down a little bit. And I can just keep tweaking it and shading and layering until I really think it looks 3-dimensional. Okay, and the last thing that you could do if you wanted to, just for your sketch, if you put like a horizontal line, that can help make it look like it's kind of sitting on a table. Okay, all right, so that's it. Give it a try. This is going to be in your Schoology account, so you'll be able to play it and stop it wherever you want. And that's it. I know you guys are going to do a good job, and I'll be around to help you. Bye.